It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump.
Max Landis.
Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark goes 11 yards, touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
Most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible! Over the one. Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
What kind of magic is automatic? I feel like dancing. I feel like dancing.
We have made it to the Sweet 16 with the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy. We've got you connected on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line at 260-447-8500, or you can watch the show this afternoon. For just a few more minutes, we are streaming at facebook.com/1380thefan. Of course, we were just talking about the final play in Maryland, Colorado State, our only real drama in the tournament so far. Great finish. Huge shot by a freshman, Derek Queen, or Dairy Queen, as I would like to call him. DQ. But, after the game, the Colorado State coach, who is now... where's he going?
Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to Minnesota.
The Gophers.
He's going to be called the Gophers. Coaching the Gophers.
Oh, them golden Gophers up there.
They fired Ben Johnson, a Minnesota guy that took over the program and just never got it trending a whole lot. It kind of just flatlined. And, I thought his teams played hard. He just didn't have the talent. And I'm sure it's not the easiest place to recruit. No. And I don't know what the NIL funding is. And, here's the tough thing. Is it's hard to judge a coach that's got a team that has a talent deficiency and say, lousy recruiter. Because right now it's all about the bag of cash you've got supporting you.
Sure.
And if they don't have the NIL funding to compete with some of the bigger programs in the Big Ten, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Things just didn't go great according to plan with Ben Johnson. He spent 4 seasons with the Gophers and went 56-71. They haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 2019 under Richard Pitino, and they haven't advanced past the first weekend of the tournament since Clem Haskins led them to a Final Four in 97.
Is this the fastest we've seen coaching hires during the course of the tournament? Like somebody gets beat and immediately the next day they're announced as a coach somewhere else? Because Will Wade, it was pretty much announced before, and he even confirmed it. And I guess he told his team that he was going to be the next coach at North Carolina State.
Yep.
And then Medved, the coach last night for Colorado State, immediately it's found out after the game that he's heading to Minnesota. And but he was asked about the final play, and I thought he had a first-class answer. Here's what he said when asked about whether or not he felt like DQ might have traveled.
I haven't seen the video yet. It's going to be hard for me to watch. I'm sure I will at some point. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it doesn't matter. They didn't call one. So, whether it was or wasn't, they didn't call one, and they never go back and change the call. But again, he made a really difficult shot, guys. I mean, he made a really, really difficult shot, and they just made one more play than we did.
Being put on the spot in a post-game press conference, he gave what I would call an A-plus answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's how you handle a question like that with nothing but absolute class.
And think about this. Yeah, but think about this, too. He's not at all disappointed in the loss because he knows, this means I get to go to Minnesota now and start making the bigger, fatter check rather than have to wait another week. I don't have to keep a secret. The cat can get out of the bag.
I don't know. I'm sure he would have loved another round with his squad, but I'm sure he's also looking forward to his next opportunity.
I mean, if you know, I don't know, because if you know you are not a Final Four team, or if you know, I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying, and at this,
the competitor in you wants to keep winning.
And at the same time, I mean, the schools and the coaches already know that these deals are going to happen before the games are even played most of the time. So it's kind of like good PR for your next hire to get as many wins in the tournament as you can.
But it's the ultimate pacifier when you lose to know that your consolation is not to go back and sulk and try to figure out who's staying and who's going and try to figure out who you're going to get in the portal. The fact that the next day you're on a plane heading to a much bigger job in the Big Ten Conference and that you're going to get a much more significant paycheck. I mean, that's a pretty good pacifier.
That does help. And I think you can also...
That's why you can accept that call and not complain about it.
And you can hang your hat on a really great tournament performance, too, for Colorado State, winning over Memphis and going to the buzzer with Maryland. That's huge.
They had that game won against Maryland. I thought it was over.
Yeah, they looked really good for a good portion of the game.
I think they were up 10 with, 3 minutes or something left or whatever. I mean, it was getting late in the game, and it was a significant lead because I know that I went in and I microwaved a meal. And when I came back, all of a sudden it's a tie game with seconds remaining. And I'm like, what happened? So, yes, I missed a few seconds of that game, and it was obviously a significant few seconds to miss because Maryland came from 10 down to a tie score. And then I thought, it's probably going to go overtime. I'm going to get some bonus basketball. But then Colorado State hits that ridiculous three-pointer, and they thought they had won. And then Maryland comes right back. I mean, this game had drama all over it.
Yeah, it was one of the better games.
Great comeback, big three-pointer, and then a wonderful finish on a tough shot where people could complain on Twitter for 24 hours on whether or not the guy traveled.
They're still going to be playing in the next round, whether you think he traveled or not.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, it's still going to be Maryland. The Big Ten, what do they have, 4 teams now in the Sweet 16?
I believe so. I'll double-check.
I think they've got 4. What's the SEC got? 7, 8?
I'll double-check.
The SEC, of course, has the largest number of teams, but yet they got the advantage of some seeding, and they got the advantage of having 14 teams that started in this tournament. So, the odds were with them to probably break a record and have the most teams advancing into a Sweet 16 from one conference in history, and that's what they've done. They set the record.
Yeah.
By the way, have you got the answer?
Go ahead, yeah. You're looking at Auburn, Tennessee, Ole Miss on Friday, and you're looking at Alabama, Florida, and Arkansas. Is Arkansas SEC? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 6 there for SEC.
I know they got at least 7.
Let's see.
Give me all the games.
Yeah, up first, you've got BYU, Alabama. So there's 1.
Alabama.
Yep. You've got Maryland, Florida. So that's 2. Arizona, Duke. None there. You've got Arkansas, Texas Tech. Is Texas Tech SEC?
Texas Tech is Big 12.
Yeah.
Texas A&M is SEC.
A&M's not in. Let's see. You've got Ole Miss, Michigan State.
That's 4.
Oh, here we go. It's a double SEC, Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's 5, 6.
Yep. And then you got Auburn.
7. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I was going to say, I was sure they had at least 7. I couldn't remember if they had 8.
I think I missed Kentucky. Sorry, Kentucky. Somebody said...
what a regional we're going to have in Indianapolis this week.
It's going to be huge, man.
What a week it is in Indianapolis this week.
Yeah. Big week.
A huge week of basketball. I mean, Pacers will take on the Los Angeles Lakers at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Wednesday.
Yes.
On Thursday, you've got open practices for the Midwest Regional at Indianapolis. And so there'll be practices for Kentucky, Tennessee, Purdue, and Houston. And what's funny is Houston's the number 1 seed, but they're the team that is from out of the region, so to speak.
Yeah. Purdue getting to play there is kind of huge.
Yeah, and Kentucky, they're going to have a huge crowd. That's only a couple of hours from Lexington. And Tennessee is not that far, 4 hours or so, 4.5.
Going to be some raucous crowds.
So you're going to have some big crowds in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. But Thursday's open practices. Then on Friday, of course, you have the games, although Purdue doesn't even tip until 10:10, which means Purdue will be a Friday/Saturday game.
Yeah, it's going to go late.
And then on Saturday, you've got the state finals over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the IHSAA state tournament.
Yep.
And best of luck, by the way, to Manchester.
Absolutely.
They made it to the state championship game. What is it, 2A?
I'll double check.
But Manchester will be playing in the state finals. They're not really our metro, but they're close enough. They're like Warsaw. We're adopting them because they made it. And then on Sunday, then you have the Elite Eight to decide who goes to the Final Four. So it is, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Big days of basketball down in Indianapolis.
Yeah, you love seeing all that stuff being hosted in our home state, and I can confirm Manchester is the 2A state championship at 12:45, Session 1, and they're taking on University, 20-9.
All right, so CBS also announced the tip times and their broadcasting assignments for this weekend's games. And I say this weekend, of course, they start on Thursday. But they will start in Newark, and the Newark East Regional is going to have Brian Anderson, Jim Jackson, and Ali LaForce. And then the other regional taking place is the West Regional, which will be in San Francisco with Kevin Harlan, Dan Bonner, Stan Van Gundy, and Lauren Shahady.
Awesome.
Now, on Friday, the South Regional, which is taking place in Atlanta, features Ian Eagle, Bill Raftery, Grant Hill, and Tracy Wolfson. That will be your Final Four broadcast team. And in Indianapolis, Andrew Catalon, Steve Lapis, and Evan Washburn. And so I ask you this. After the first weekend of games, I'm sure you've probably watched some games that were called by any one of these broadcast groups. How do you rank them?
Let's see. I'm going to go the Kevin Harlan, Stan Van Gundy group at number 1. I'm going to do.
Here's the only. Okay, let me just interject real quick because here's my thought. Here's my thought. I wish instead of Dan Bonner it was Robbie Hummel, because I think not having Robbie Hummel in any of these groups is a shame. And they basically kept the groups together. But Robbie Hummel just does an outstanding job as an analyst.
He does. He does a great job. But like I said, I'm going to do number 1. I'm going to do the Kevin Harlan, Stan Van Gundy team. Number 2, I'm going to put Ian Eagle, Grant Hill, Bill Raftery. Number 3, I'll do Brian Anderson, Jim Jackson, Ali LaForce. Number 4, Andrew Catalon, Steve Lapis, and Evan Washburn.
And so you've got the number 4 team doing the Purdue game.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And okay, now I love Kevin Harlan. I especially love Kevin Harlan on radio.
Yeah, he's
because
so
I
good.
think he paints the picture and just brings drama to a radio broadcast. Love him on radio. Really, really like him on TV. But Brian Anderson, to me, is a really skilled announcer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll go with the guys that I think are better to complement the picture. And I'll say Brian Anderson and Ian Eagle tied for first.
Okay.
Kevin Harlan then gets third place. Even though if it was radio, I'd put Harlan first. I want to make sure to mention that because I love Kevin Harlan. And if you've heard me on this show before, I have raved about Kevin Harlan. And then fourth for me, also Andrew Catalon.
All right. Sounds good.
Give us your thoughts. You can text them to us, 260-447-8500 on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line, or you can comment on our Facebook stream, facebook.com/1380thefan. Hey, got to tell you, if you're heading out for a spring break getaway, you want to get your car to Cruzy Automotive Service. Maybe even if you're not, you might want to get the car checked because, the rough winter weather that we have here in the Midwest, especially in Northeast Indiana, it can do a number on your car, belts, hoses, your battery with the cold temperatures. Also want to check your tires, your tread, your brakes. All of that can be checked out. It's a spring break road-ready checkup at Cruzy Automotive Service. Plus, you get to save on your oil change, which, of course, you're going to want to have done before you hit the highways. And so at Cruzy Automotive Service, you can get an oil change under $20. That's right, $19.99. You can get your full-service oil change. You can get all the details by contacting Cruzy Automotive Service. You can go where I go. They've been doing business in Northeast Indiana for over 40 years. Cruzy Automotive Service on Lima Road, north of Wallen, south of Till, right behind the Shell gas station. You can call for an appointment at 489-1089. That's 489-1089 for Cruzy Automotive Service. Welcome back to the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy, and it's a big week here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Coming up later tonight, we've got Pacers basketball. They'll take on the Minnesota T-Wolves. Of course, a lot of questionables with guys dealing with injuries. You know, it's that time of year where guys are breaking down a little bit. I mean, you're 70 games into an 82-game schedule, and guys are worn down, and the bodies are worn down. And so the Pacers have a couple of question marks, including Ben Mathurin. I don't know if we'll get an update on that, but Pacers T-Wolves tonight, 7 o'clock, and also Pacers basketball comes up on Wednesday. It's a big one at Gainbridge Fieldhouse as the Pacers will take on the Los Angeles Lakers. It is LeBron and company visiting Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the only time this year. It's a 7:30 tip-off. It's a national television audience, but if you can't catch it on TV, you can always listen to it because we've got your Pacers coverage here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. As we mentioned, we know that Purdue is playing a late game, very late game, down at Gainbridge Fieldhouse coming up on Friday. They will not tip off until after 10 p.m. on Friday night. And so the Boilermakers take on Houston, and that will be the number 1 seeded Houston squad that is coached, of course, by Kelvin Sampson. And that game will be a 10:09 approximate tip, and it will be broadcast right here on 1380 The Fan, 100.9 FM, with coverage from Rob Blackman and, of course, the Purdue Radio Network. Now, coming up on Saturday, another full day this week, we've got the best of the Sports Rush at 8 a.m., talking sports, 9 a.m., golf with Jay Delsing, 10 a.m., and then it's right back to the Elite 8 on Saturday afternoon. Every week at this time, it is our pleasure to have a visit with the Hall of Fame broadcaster of the Indiana Hoosiers. Plenty has happened down in Bloomington since we last spoke a week ago. We've got a lot to catch up on. It is Don Fischer, our 15 Minutes with Fisch, always presented by Hoopy Insurance Services. Well, Don, what a week it has been down in Bloomington. You've got transfer portal news. You've got new coach news. Of course, that's where we want to start. Darian DeVries comes from West Virginia, where he spent all of one season, formerly with Drake, and he is the new Indiana basketball coach. Your thoughts? This was one of the names high on everybody's list, so they really didn't redirect this and fool anybody. This was a guy that was thought to be a top prospect from the beginning.
Well, I think that's true to some degree, but I think that there was a real doubt in a lot of people's minds whether he would come after just 1 year at West Virginia. But and because he obviously did a pretty good job at West Virginia that first season, but he decided that Indiana was the job that the kind of job that you can't turn down if it's offered, and I think that's exactly what Indiana did. But I will say this: I was totally impressed with his press conference. I liked the way he went about his business and talking about what he's done in the past, how he builds a team, the things that he thinks are important into that build. And I everything that he said, it reminded me a lot of the first press conference with Curt Cignetti a year ago. And I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but he talked about character of players and building that roster and those kinds of things, and how important it is for the construction of that roster with the type of players that you get. Everything that he said in his press conference, I thought was very significant in regard to what it sounded like when Curt Cignetti was hired at Indiana and talked about how he was going to build a program. And I don't know how you could be negative about that, because Curt Cignetti's build in that first season was absolutely a miracle for Indiana football. And I'm not going to say that Darian DeVries is going to get Indiana to a national championship or even to the NCAA tournament in his first year, but I would not doubt that he could get Indiana into that position if he gets the kind of players that he's hoping to get.
Well, let's talk about that, because it doesn't hurt when a good coach has a great son, great player who is a son. And it does look like Tucker DeVries undoubtedly is going to become a Hoosier. He's an 18-point-per-game scorer. He's got unlimited three-point range. I mean, he immediately brings something to IU that IU is missing.
There's no question about that. A consistent, and I emphasize the word consistent, three-point scorer. I think in his career, he's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 43 to 45% in his career. And at West Virginia, in his first 8 or 9 games that he played there before he got hurt and was out for the rest of the year, he was hitting 48% of his three-point shots. So this is a guy that can absolutely throw down threes. He's about 6'6", 6'7", someplace in that neighborhood. I think he rebounds pretty well as well, and he's very, very smart. And that's the kind of player you're looking for, whether they can clone 3 or 4 of these other guys out of the transfer portal like him or not. But I think Darian DeVries is definitely going to try and do that because he emphasized how important it was to have three-point shooters on his roster. And they did a lot of three-point shooting at West Virginia, and they did so at Drake as well. One of the reasons they had a ton of success in that regard.
I don't think that Tucker DeVries is going to be alone either. I think he's going to have some company coming from West Virginia, and they might even get a pretty dynamic freshman that comes along too, because they had a top 75 freshman that was recruited to West Virginia who has decommitted and is trying to I think make the switch to IU as well.
Well, you guys do. You, Brett, you are among those guys that dig into this stuff immediately and find out stuff that I don't even think about. Just so you know.
Well, it's going to be a long time before you have to call their name on the court. See, we've got the pressure of a daily show where we've got to come up with something to talk about. So that, kind of our job is like, oh, they're mentioning this name.
I know.
They're mentioning this guy.
I'm halfway retired. You know that. So I play golf in the summertime, and I'm not worried about anything else except that little white ball.
No more games. We can turn it off until football season. But it does look like there may be some more help coming with West Virginia. Yeah. Now, I do know you're aware that Malik Renew has entered the transfer portal.
Right.
I was not surprised by Gabe Cupps. The numbers just didn't add up for him. He was having a tough time getting on the floor, and probably a better opportunity for Gabe Cupps elsewhere. And I respect and understand that. Malik Renew surprised me, though. For a school that has a really good NIL budget, you wouldn't think that it would be money that he would get. I don't know. I don't know what happened. The change coaches, is it just an allegiance to Mike Woodson, or do you know anything about that?
I honestly don't, but there is allegiance to Woodson because he brought Malik to Indiana. There's no question about that. And so there is an allegiance there. But I don't know if that's the reason that he's leaving, and he made it sound pretty much like he was not thinking about getting out of the transfer portal and coming back to Indiana. He pretty much said goodbye to the Hoosier Nation, no question about that. I'm not saying that after talking to DeVries that he might change his mind. That's possible. But I can't answer the question other than to know, and I know Malik a little bit, and my gut feeling is he wants to get back closer to home. He's a Florida kid, obviously, and that may be a major reason too from a family perspective. So all I can tell you is that Malik has made his announcement to be in the portal, and it sounds like he said goodbye to Indiana University, and we'll see if anybody else does the same thing. Nobody else has gotten in the portal, though, since those two guys made their announcement last week, shortly after DeVries was announced as the new coach. But nobody else has made that kind of pronouncement, and I think that Darian is talking to all these other players that have the eligibility to come back and play again, and then it's up to them to make their decision. So we'll see how that all plays out. But there aren't a lot of players left on this roster. Obviously, Rice and Carlisle are two guys that are still pretty young in as far as college basketball is concerned. They still have 2 years of eligibility left as far as we know at this point. Those two guys are a possibility. I think Luke Goody wants to come back if they can get a medical red shirt for that one season. He missed most of it at Illinois, but of course he played at the end of that season, not the beginning of it. And I don't know how that affects the possibility of a medical red shirt or not. Some people have told me that they don't think that's a good thing in his regard, but let's face facts here. The NCAA, for a long time now, has talked about the fact that, this is how things are going to be, and then they change their mind, and they don't follow through on what they said. So at this point, I'm not sure what rules are employed by the NCAA anymore. So I'm looking at it like if Luke Goody only played 8 or 9 ball games in that season or 10 games in that season for Illinois, that he may get a medical red shirt and he could come back. But I think he wants to. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure the NCAA has rules anymore. I think the courts have pretty much voided every rule that they have ever existed under. At least it seems that way. All right, Did you get a chance to watch some ball this weekend?
I did. I watched quite a few of the ball games this weekend. I had nothing else to do. The weather wasn't good enough to get out on the golf course, so I did watch quite a few of them.
Who'd you like?
Well, I'll tell you, I had not seen much of Florida during the season. I'm really impressed by them. I filled out a bracket like just about everybody else in the world, and I have 10 teams left out of the Sweet 16 that are still alive and kicking. But my gut feeling is right now, I think it's Florida and Houston are the two best teams in college basketball right now. I know Auburn's right there, too. There's no doubt they could get there. Alabama's a good basketball team. But my gut feeling is it's going to be Florida and Houston in the final game, and I want Houston to win it because despite everybody's hate of Kelvin Sampson in our state, as far as Indiana University is concerned, I still think that guy's a tremendous coach.
Did you catch Duke at all?
I did see Duke. I mean, they're obviously good. There's no question. But believe it or not, I picked them to get knocked out after their first ball game in the tournament. So they're out of my bracket, and I'm not even thinking about them anymore.
Yeah, that's one of those 6 that you're not having on your bracket right now.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of brackets, Terry Morin and the Indiana Hoosiers women's basketball team saw their season come to an end. Not surprised. They put up a good fight. Just in my mind, they just didn't have the offensive firepower. They didn't have enough scores that could go get a bucket when they needed it. They had to really fight for their points, and it's a very good South Carolina team, but certainly no embarrassment over the final score playing at South Carolina.
No, not at all. I mean, those girls fought their tails off, and you're absolutely 100% right when you talk about the fact that they didn't have enough scoring power this season. They didn't have the inside presence that Mackenzie Holmes brought to the table for the 4 years she played at Indiana, or 5. And there's little question they didn't have the inside game as much as they did when they had Mackenzie. That factored into it, and they just didn't have as much firepower. You're absolutely 100% right in that regard.
Don, we'll let you go, and hopefully better weather for golf days ahead. And we'll talk to you one more time coming up next Monday, and we'll talk about what the off season holds, and maybe even get a football preview with you next week.
Yeah, spring football, it's already underway. They had 3 spring practices the week and a half before they left on spring break, and they'll be back at it this Thursday. Will be their 4th practice of the season. Spring game is on April the 17th at 8 o'clock in the evening. We will have a chance to see a practice before next Monday's show, and we'll obviously give you an update.
All right. Sounds great. Have a great week, Don. Good luck on the bracket. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Thanks, bud. See you.
Yep, that is Don Fischer joining us here on the Sports Rush. Of course, our 15 Minutes with Fisch, always presented by Hoopy Insurance Services. Need to get an insurance agent that can represent multiple companies to get you the best rate and the best policy? Contact Hoopy, H-U-P-E Insurance Services. Locally owned and operated, your independent insurance agent. We've got to take a time out. Plenty more still coming up. We're here till 6 with your daily local sports fix. It is the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Of course, if you're looking for basketball today, you're getting it with the women's basketball NCAA tournament. And a lot of blowouts. Once again, Oklahoma is up on Iowa 76-50. It will be the third straight game of the day where a Big Ten team gets blown out.
Yes, it will. Checking the other game in action right now, it is 4th-seeded Maryland taking on 5th-seeded Alabama, and the trend is continuing right now. Maryland has a 6-point lead over Alabama, 33-27.
Well, that's not the trend, though, because Maryland is at least a Big Ten opponent.
I was just saying the trend of the higher seeds winning is continuing.
Well, and it's been pretty big margins. Well, Indiana did fall 64-53 yesterday to South Carolina, and Notre Dame advancing onto the Sweet 16 as they get a 76-55 win over Michigan, another Big Ten team that took a beating.
Yeah, yep, there you go.
You're heavy at the top and light below that because you've got USC, UCLA, although UCLA was in a fight yesterday for a good part of that game and then eventually pulled away from Richmond 84-67.
Yeah.
So UCLA's on to the Sweet 16. USC, they play tonight.
They do. They have Mississippi State at 10 o'clock p.m.
That's a battle of the 1 versus 9 seed. You also have UConn taking on South Dakota State from the Summit League.
Yeah, one of the only 10 seeds to make it to this round.
I think the only 10 seed.
I think so.
And I think you had 2 9 seeds, and everybody else was chalk.
Pretty darn chalk, yeah. Like we said earlier in the first hour, the women's tournament doesn't really begin until the Elite 8 or so.
Yeah. Also, news today that Mackenzie Mbako is entering the transfer portal. He plans to not only enter the portal, but also declare for the NBA draft. That according to Peegs.com. All right, so the Sweet 16 is set for the men. We now know Thursday and Friday, the matchups, and what time they will start. The Purdue Boilermakers will be the late game on Friday, so they will be the final game among all the Sweet 16 contests.
Yep, last game of the Sweet 16. But we're going to guess some of these lines.
Yeah, I want to guess some lines. I've not seen what the lines are.
All right, we're going to get you within a point and a half.
Let's see if I can get within a point and a half.
All right, we're going to start off on Thursday. Your first matchup, the BYU Cougars taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is a 6-2 matchup.
And I think Alabama will be a favorite. I know that BYU has had their run, but I think that KenPom has this as a 6 or 7 point Alabama victory because I have looked at KenPom numbers, but I've not looked at any of the Vegas lines. So I'm going to go based on that it is Alabama as a 6-point favorite.
I'll give it to you. Yep, you're at Alabama minus 5.5. So
okay.
just a half a point off.
I was going to say that first, but I thought, stretch it. Okay, what else?
All right, up next is the 4th seed Maryland Terrapins taking on the number 1 Florida Gators.
Well, clearly Florida is going to be a favorite, and so the question is just by how much. And I think Florida is probably going to be a fairly comfortable favorite. At least I think the public is going to want to bet Florida heavily because I think a lot of people's brackets has Florida winning the entire thing. I'm going to go with Florida 10.5.
Not close enough. It's only a 6.5 point favorite for Florida. Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. Up next, it's 4 seed Arizona taking on number 1 Duke.
This is going to be a comfortable margin for Duke. You scared me when I thought at 10.5 it was 6.5, so now I'm going to underbet probably. I'm going to say Duke 8.5.
You're right on, 8.5.
Hey!
There you go. Good job.
I learned something. I adjusted slightly.
All right, your last matchup of Thursday, it's number 10 Arkansas against number 3 Texas Tech.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because if you throw the seeds out, I would feel differently than knowing what the seeds are. I am going to say this is a close one. I'll say Texas Tech 2.5.
Texas Tech is a minus 5.5 point favorite against Arkansas and John Calipari.
Wow.
All right, going on to Friday. The first matchup of Friday, you've got Ole Miss taking on Michigan State. It's a 6 versus 2.
Michigan State will be the favorite in this one, and I think Michigan State is probably a 4.5 point favorite.
You would have gotten it if you had said 4. Michigan State is only a -2.5 point favorite against Ole Miss. Yeah, they're liking the Ole Miss run, I guess. Also on Friday, you've got Kentucky versus Tennessee. You've got a 3 versus 2, both SEC teams.
This is a tough one because I don't know who to even pick as the favorite. I think Tennessee's a 2 seed. Kentucky's the 3 seed.
Yep.
I'm not sure where KenPom has these teams. I bet this is very close. I'm going to say Tennessee at 2.5.
You were close. If you had said 3, you would have gotten it because Tennessee is a -4.5 point favorite.
Jeez, I'm coming so close.
You are getting close. All right, 2 more. Michigan taking on Auburn. It's a 5 versus a 1.
This will be Auburn, and I will say 5.5.
Take it up higher, kick it up a notch. Auburn -8.5.
Really? Over Michigan?
Over Michigan.
Wow.
And Dusty May. Your last one of the night, your last game of the Sweet 16.
Oh, no.
Purdue taking on Houston in Indianapolis, a 4 versus a 1.
Yeah, but I'm still in that same neighborhood I've been with a lot of these games. I think Houston, I'm going to go 6.5.
Houston 7.5, so you were within 1.
I was a little closer. It's a good one to finish on.
Not bad at all.
But what was I, about 500?
Yeah, right around there. I'll give you 650. Just for good measure.
Yeah, I was in the neighborhood. All right, we got to take a break. We're going to come back. We'll wrap it up here on a Monday edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. There's a tight one going on in women's basketball. Maryland and Alabama all tied up 39 apiece, 23 seconds remaining before halftime. So that is being played tonight. You've got South Dakota State, UConn. That game will be at 8 o'clock. USC will be playing Mississippi State coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. So a couple of games maybe to keep an eye on if you need a basketball fix tonight. Hey, tomorrow, don't forget Macedon's women's basketball team back in action in the WNIT. It's the second round, and they'll be hosting the Old Dominion Monarchs. First ever meeting between Purdue Fort Wayne and Old Dominion, 7 o'clock at the Gates Center. You can get tickets online at GoMastodons.com. Hopefully you make it out there and support this outstanding basketball team featuring Lauren Ross, the nation's #1 3-point shooter and #1 free throw shooter. Quite a star.
Yeah, let's go Women Dons.
So that game coming up tomorrow night. Big thanks to Don Fischer for joining us on the program as he does each and every Monday. We've got one Monday left with Don Fischer. Coming up next week, we'll have our final episode of our 15 Minutes with Fisch, presented by Hoopy Insurance Services. Have a great Monday night. Enjoy your basketball. We're back tomorrow 4 to 6 with another edition of the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.